Good evening to you and welcome on The Probe. Last week, we took a stab at building or buying your dream house, weighing the pros and cons of each. Tonight, we shall address what many consider the bedrock of the entire situation, the hyper-headed problem of cost. Why exactly is housing so expensive in Ghana? We probe this matter, break it down for you, and show you the routes to take as we delve into today's topic with Samuel Amegaibo, Executive Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, and Daniel Ohene Aidoo, Project Manager for the planned City Extension Project. I'm Benjamin Akakpo. Gather round and let's discuss where to lay our heads. We're live on JoyNews, Joy Prime, myjoyonline.com, and on DSTV channel 421, on GoTV channel 144. On radio, we're live on Joy 99.7 FM, Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi, and a dozen affiliates across the country. Stay tuned. We shall be right back.
Hello, I'm Dori Nando. You can catch up with all the fun on the Cosmopolitan Mix and on all our shows via podcast. Just go to My Joy Online podcast and search for your favorite show and relive those moments all over again. Only on Joy 99.7 FM, radio for discerning listeners.
Super Hits Radio, Joy 99.7.
My name is Benjamin Akakpo. This is The Probe. Welcome back. Tonight, we discuss why housing is so costly in Ghana and how to find your way around it to get quality and save all at once. How, you ask? My guests are here to give us the scoop, starting with Mr. Samuel Amegaibo, whom you'd remember from last week's conversation on whether you should build or buy your dream house. Mr. Amegaibo is Executive Secretary of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association. Mr. Amegaibo, a very good evening to you.
Good evening to your viewers as well.
Great. Also here is Daniel Ohene Aidoo, Project Manager for the planned City Extension Project. He'll also be joining us to talk about another dimension, renting to own, among myriad matters. Mr. Aidoo, a very good evening to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. So it's interesting because last week we started with building or buying and the many dynamics in there. But this week, especially as we talk about this issue to do with, this property you want to go for and the cost of it. I'd like to start from here. There are two angles to the cost of housing or the housing situation. You're either renting or you're making an outright purchase.
No, but you're either buying.
You're either buying
or you're building.
You're building, yes. But when it comes to the cost factor, it's either the rent you are paying or you're making a purchase of the land, yes, whether outright, a purchase of the facility, whether outright or otherwise. But the cost factor has become a very important one. And this is why today we need to break down why it is so and what the dynamics really are. Putting that into perspective, we know that in this country, if you want to rent, the least you'd get is about 1 year. It's 6 months per the law, and from what we've been discussing, that is even going to be pushed back to 1 year. Why do you feel this is the case?
Good evening once again to your viewers. We are back here this evening to put some meat on what we did last week. And this topic sometimes it raises some fever or high tension in the system when we want to talk about it.
This one is more like hay fever.
Yes. Anything related to properties brings a lot of emotions around because it's a lifetime investment that people have to make. Now, when it comes to the issue of rental, it is already difficult to come up with the amount that you require. And then you are saddled with also long-term rent advance, which has been the major block and the difficulty that all of us are having. Fortunately or unfortunately, the law rather is being revised to make room for us to shift from the usual 6 months rent advance that we are aware of into 1 year. This is because the system has now recognized the fact that people are making business out of the situation, and so their interest and investment needs to be protected. That is why the issue of rental has moved from 1 year, the 6 months, and is heading for 1 year.
So it's basically to reflect the reality.
To reflect the reality, because this is purely, in fact, it is purely demand and supply issue.
Right.
But when it becomes an investment for somebody, then we have to look at the commitment and what goes into the provision of the property to make it available for the rental. And so what can you do to cushion the investors who want to branch into that the department of housing? And so it's a bit difficult. Ideally, and in the advanced countries, most people are paying rent monthly. But our situation is the other way around, because our supply is far, far below what is required on the market. That is why we have to make room to make sure that at least we must survive. And so if the business calls for this kinds of adjustment to make it possible for more people to go into the business of making rooms available for rentals, then we have to go there.
So we'll be talking about some of those adjustments and how government comes into the picture at some point. But now that you are talking about comparative levels, I mean, when we started talking about this, people were basically saying, so compared to what? And we'll make some of those comparisons. When you look at the Mercer Cost of Living Survey, which focuses on housing, you will notice that in 2019, Ghana ranked 63rd. That is, Accra, I should say, ranked 63rd as one of the most expensive expat destinations across the world, out of 209 countries. Only last year, 2020, we went even higher up, from 63rd to 53rd. I think the only other African country I saw that high was Lagos. And it's understandable. If you've lived in Lagos, you know what it's like and how expensive it is. But looking at that, out of 209 countries, it paints a picture that we are very expensive. And that is a fact, even for expats. Now we are quoting rent in dollars. Though in our system, we're not supposed to do that. Mr. Aidoo, how do you feel about this entire situation? How did we get here?
In fact, from where I sit, I believe that this thing about housing has been looked at, as an investment or as business, right from scratch. I mean, for a long time now, there hasn't been so much of the social aspects of it. And unfortunately, I think successive governments haven't been successful, at driving this housing thing.
Right.
So few individuals or businesses that, started it, looked at it purely as business. And, once you have gone high up there, it's very difficult to bring it down. Unless the demand, like Sam is saying, unless the supply has also gone up a bit.
Right.
At least we know that the components we all know, the lands, the materials, once they go up, definitely the housing thing will also go up. If you look at the SNITS flats, even those days that I remember First Ghana Building Society, HFC, all those ones that were
those earlier projects that were started.
Projects. I mean, they were all purely business. You understand? So, and once there's a business factor, though it's solving something, it's bringing some solution, at the end of the day, it's not going to be really out there for the masses. Once it's business, the profit thing comes in.
We started so well. You're speaking from the purely business end. We started so well under Nkrumah and some of the facilities from Kanda moving to other places. But then, of course, his government was ousted and everything went down the drain. Now we have, since you're talking government, we have affordable housing that is not affordable. And, other business people also coming into the fray. The last I saw, and even that looks a bit affordable, $30,000 if you're paying upfront, if not $35,000, and it goes on. Two bedroom around 40-something thousand, 3-bedroom around 60-something thousand. How many Ghanaians can actually cough up such sums? And that brings me to my next question, right before we go and take some of the questions that are coming through via social media. As a real estate developer, Mr. Amegaibo, what are some of the facilities or logistics you have to provide for your would-be clients that make your housing units pricey?
Okay. In fact, before we even get into what facility you should add, let's actually look at what constitutes actually the pricing.
Okay.
What makes you pricey?
Let's get into that.
So whichever way, just like we discussed last week, whether you are self-building or you are buying, there's a cost to it. But generally, the fundamentals are the same. And then we will look at it from either a pre-contract activity of a project or the post-contract. There are two major areas that you look at, either pre-contract or post-contract. What are the costs that you incur in these two major areas when it comes to projects? So let's look at whichever way you are saddled with this cost that I'm going to talk about. One of them is consultancy. If you check from industry players, they will tell you that consultancy charges are between 10 and 16% of the project cost.
10 and 16%?
Yes, that is how much you have to pay for general consultancy. Consultancy has to do with the engineering, design, and all the other factors that go into it. Then we also look at the land, which as for land, which we discussed here, will not finish. Land is one major headache, where you have to pay several people sometimes before you can own it as your own land, and then move on. So if your build-up cost is 20 cedis, and you have to pay more than one person to own it, it means that double whatever it is. So it is also a challenge. Then materials, the cost of materials.
That was what I was going to get into next.
Yes. If it is about importation of these materials, you know the charges that you pay, import charges that you have to pay before you clear these materials. So if you are comparing a building, the same plan of a building, and say in the US, and you are comparing it in Ghana, because you are in Ghana here, you are going to buy it the same price as the US person will pay, right. But then you are importing, so you pay extra. So these are some of the things that people have to understand. And then the currency volatilities, right. Which is something we also know, right. Fluctuation, it's all. And then the labor cost. You know, there was a recent study, that's last week we had a discussion on, and they are saying that Ghana labor, that we pay more for our labor, for our construction workers, than perhaps the whole of West Africa, which I found it very strange.
I know people who, to cut down on costs, bring people from Togo
and all that, but they are saying that in Ghana we pay for labor more than most of the neighboring countries. Then the cost of basic infrastructure. We build estates and they are not habitable if you don't bring water, you don't bring electricity, bring the basic road. And these days they are even adding internet. And then community building. Sometimes the cost of the estate, there are certain costs that are not direct on each unit, but it brings to add to the community living. And so these costs are all part of the cost for that. And then the contractors' overheads and profit, which is also between 25% and 35%, thereabout. And
which is between what, 25%
yes,
and 35%?
And 25%. If you are using external contractors to do your project for you, that's their margin.
Okay.
So overheads, cost, and profits.
Let's be realistic with this. So if you're looking at 10 to 16% for consultants, you're looking at 25 to 35% for the contractors' overhead cost and all of that. Then piping through whatever logistics, utilities are needed. Yes. It means it just becomes the cumbersome mess that we see.
Then funding.
Right.
We did that last week, but I want to bring a different dimension. Funding, there are two components of funding to the would-be property owner. I, the developer, may not have the money, so I'll borrow first, and I'm borrowing at around 24%. 24% of 100,000 becomes 124,000.
Right.
Then you, the will-be owner, you are either using mortgage or using a loan facility. You don't have the money. You also go and borrow again, so now another 24% of 124%. That takes the funding cost alone so high. I mean, just for us to understand why some of this are very important issues for us.
When I come back to you, the two of you, we'll be talking about the role government can play in all of this, because currency volatility and all of that, it lies within the domain of
policy.
Policy, indeed. Let's now look at some of what you've been sharing with us, questions that are on your mind, and let's get down to them. Asumanu Inusa says, one thing that bothers me is that that is our leaders, keep talking about housing deficits and how to close the gap, and yet at the same time increasing the prices of building materials such that the average worker finds it difficult to build. Do you think it's possible to tell the people about affordable housing and yet increase the price of the building materials? That's from Inusa, sending in that one. Robert says, Ghanaians don't see housing as an investment, but something for retirement. So 90% of the house owners live in the same building, creating problems for tenants. I've started monthly rent payments like Abidjan in a small apartment building that I am managing. Okay. So there's also that issue there. Nana Sapon says, a lot of factors come to play. One, the price of land, cost of building the property. Last year, a ton of iron rods was 2,800 Ghana cedis. Today, it's 5,500 for 12 millimeter and 16 millimeter rods. Cement was 28 Ghana cedis, now 49. I hear in some places it's 50 something. The cost of labor has gone up by 55 to 60%. So you do the math. If you're an investor, you buy land 70 to 100 at East Legon. You mean in thousands of dollars. For 150,000, oh, okay, so 70 by 100 at East Legon for 150,000, and spend another 50,000 to 200,000 to build a 2-bedroom, that is 6-unit apartment. Will you charge 1,000 cedis per month? It will take you 30 years to recoup your investment. The price of accommodation will get worse if the government does not invest in the cement and steel industry. That's a very poignant message that has been sent through by Robert. This one says, with cost of land, building materials and labor, cement is now selling for 51 Ghana cedis. The price of land outside Accra is about 40K. That's Prosper Bonnie, and that is the reality. If you're thinking going up to Aidoo or something. Ben says, maybe housing is not expensive. Maybe income is very, very low in Ghana. Trust me, too low. Mr. Megai, but that was something else that we were discussing. Okay, last one for now, this batch. Mohammed says, 1, landlords fight land guards without the help of government. 2, the price of building materials go up every day, so the landlords also charge any amount they want. And 3, government doesn't have affordable houses for rent. That is Mohammed there. So let's quickly do this. Let's talk about the gentleman who was talking about, first of all, acquiring land in East Legon. Utibete, you are looking at many tens of thousands of dollars. That's just acquiring the land. Then you get into putting up the structure. You obviously will not be taking 1,000 cedis rent. In fact, you'll be charging in dollars, right? Though the system says you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's the reality. Normally, if you had invested in property, one would have thought that between 15 to 17 years. It used to be 12. But now we'll push it to be about 15 to 17 years. You should be able to recoup your investment. But per the calculations that we have just done in this studio, it tells you that it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all.
The math simply doesn't work. You can't put up a structure like that and,
it just doesn't work. So
that.
You have to put it up and wait for a very long time before, and then you will be saddled also with maintenance, because as the building is aging, then the maintenance cost increases. So it means that you'll be having some recurrent expenditure that will also affect there. So it is not in the making of people, developers, to deliberately charge extremely high. It's just the system and the arrangement that don't support affordability. That is the reality.
Okay. Mr. Aidoo, we are talking about cost, and now we are also looking at some of the things that government can do. You have your own, policy that you've come through with, or program, which is renting to own. But before we get into renting to own, what it is proper, what do you think from your end government can do to sort of mitigate the situation, to ensure that housing prices can come down, just like Robert has sent through? It is not practical.
You see, it's not easy to say, because you and I know that, and I'm not talking for government, once fuel prices and some other key items in the economy goes up, it triggers a general price hike across board. You understand? Government may want to waive, in fact, I think there is a VAT waiver on real estate, right? Yeah, but there are still other components in there. For instance, cement prices that are up will definitely not make prices come down. If iron rods prices go up, it would not make prices go down. And I believe that for these problems, we know them. We know them too. I mean, so much that the problems themselves know that we know them. You understand? So for me, I believe that government must have a long-term view of investment into housing. There's no shortcut, or there's no way about this. If government would take a very long-term view of housing, I believe that if we give ourselves 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we will see this, some of these problems, I mean, going away. Whether the prices are high or not, they will still be affordable. Because you see, affordability is really relative. Let me just give an example. If the housing projects, the affordable housing projects that were started from President Jacob's time, you know, to date, we still have not.
There are so many of them. I've seen images, videos.
We have not been able to give a lot of them out. You know, but if we had a plan, a very strategic, well thought out plan laid out. This is over 20 years now. You understand? A lot of people would have had houses, and we would not be talking about these things like we are talking about today.
Okay, Mr. Aidoo, I just have to interject here. That proposal is a very good one. I think we all agree on that. But it's also very problematic. Why? Because of the political rollover in this country.
Yes, that is why.
And the fact that coming administrations almost never seem to continue with whatever policies that are initiated by the previous administrations. That, I feel, is a problem we have to grapple with.
It is, and that is why, for instance, we have the Planned City Extension Project. You know, it is structured or modeled in a way that there is no, even though it is being facilitated by the government, for that matter, the district assembly, the local government, you know, supporting it, it is purely private led.
Right.
There is no way any government can come and intervene.
Okay.
You understand? There is no way, because the government doesn't own the investments. It is modeled like 1D, 1F. Government or the district assembly is promoting. It doesn't have any hand in the typical investments that's going on. And if you look at the model itself, I mean, it's one of the most, for me, one of the most innovative approaches I have seen so far. Currently, what we are doing, we are working out something with the Department of Cooperatives. And it's something which maybe at an appropriate time we would discuss. I mean, because these are, we have talked a lot about the problems. We're talking a lot about cost now. We need to look at the very practical solutions. I mean, very practical solutions that the security person that is at the Ministry of Local Government who earns maybe less than 500 a month.
Right. How can he or she own a property?
Or she own a property going on pension?
Okay, and now that you mentioned pension, very relevant, because someone sent in a message saying that many Ghanaians don't see these facilities they put up as investments. They see them as retirement packages. And so 90% of house owners live in the same building with the tenants, creating problems. And that is another angling. What is your take on that? And from there, you can also tell us why, I mean, what renting to own is, basically, and why it can help address, you know, some of these problems.
Maybe let me start from the
bottom.
From the bottom.
The last question, right.
You see, renting to own, you don't have monies up front. The 20%, the 30% initial, I mean, down payments to buy your own home. But we know that in Ghana, more people are renting. I think we have more people renting than ownership, actual ownership. Right. Yes. So if you have to rent and you have to pay 1,000 Ghana cedis, 1,500 Ghana cedis, 2,500 cedis, and even in dollars. And at the end of the day, the property is still not yours. You still, I mean, are you going to forever rent? But our own studies show that every Ghanaian wants to own. I mean, so someone is going on pension, he or she wants to make sure that at least he's finished that platform or foundation or put up that small room before he goes on pension. So for rent to own, you are putting up small monies rental, making small rental payments. But you are not finished, finishing the full payment before you move in. You are moving in when you have made some reasonable amount, 20%. then you move into the house, stay in there, continue to make your payments. But once you are even already in there, you have that peace of mind.
Okay,
to work.
So Mr. Magaibo, last week we were talking about the mortgage facilities, and many of them will tell you 20% as a baseline. So if it's 100,000, Ghana cedis, you're looking at 20,000, and then you can get in there, and then you'll be making the follow-up payments. But when it comes to this renting to own option, it's interesting because now you're saying that you're making the same payments, but you have to wait when you reach 20%. Then you can move in and you follow, you continue from there.
Exactly. So you see, this is how it works. There are those who want to buy outright. There are those who want to make payment within 1 year. There are those who want to move in earlier than, the scheduled, because once you apply and you are paying normal, maybe 25 years or 10 years, every application, your house will be ready within 36 months. So if at the time, you have you have completed your 20%, you can move into your house, stay in there and continue to make your payments till you finish.
Okay.
Yeah, so
which is like the monthly rent.
The monthly rent. So
okay.
it's a rental. You finish paying for it, it's yours.
So it's kind of like a work and pay system, but how different essentially is it from, the mortgage end? Because I'm seeing that more or less, it's very similar. In one instance, the mortgage instance, you're paying 20% down payment, then you continue from there at your own pace. Of course, there are other things attached, and if you default, then there are consequences. Here, you have to still pay the 20% before you can move in. Mr. Megaibo, I'll get back to
confused,
you.
right?
Is it not practically the same thing?
Yes, it's about the same thing, but the difference here is that with the mortgage, there's a betweener. The betweener is the bank.
It's the bank.
But in this arrangement, you have the direct relationship with the developer.
That's right.
Okay.
So interest, like the financing, double financing thing I talked to you about, is kind of curtailed in this arrangement because you are either hit with only one interest instead of two. Because if he is borrowing, whatever he borrows is what he's slapping on his project. But beyond that, it is a direct relationship.
Right.
That's the difference. Right. And then with the mortgage too, now is the 20% is not really an issue. They can finance you from zero.
Okay.
Yeah, they can finance you from
zero. So you move in?
Yes.
Right from the get-go?
Yes. The mortgage is a finished house is there for you.
Yes.
That's also one difference.
Yes.
With the mortgage, you have identified the property which is finished. So you do your agreement with the bank and then you just take over that house immediately. That's the difference. But with this one, he says that you have to pay 20% and then you can move in when it is completed. And over a time, your rental, payment becomes like a part of paying back the cost of the house. And so,
okay. Back to you, Mr. Aidoo. So there are some differences. How is this so different that it can benefit, like you were saying, the security man at the ministries who is earning, let's assume, 500 Ghana cedis every month? How can people like that feed into the rent to own facility? Break it down for us. And how many years are we looking at? When you're going with the banks, usually about 60, that's for a purely bank facility. By a mortgage, it goes, it may go beyond that, much longer than that. What is the difference?
Right. So for our rent to own, Mr. Megaibo was just explaining a little bit, which is true. There is nothing like a double interest because you are doing direct. Now, for those that are earning so low, we have a system for government workers, for instance. Government workers are doing 5% discount straight up. If you're a government worker and you want to hook onto our system, you have 5% discount straight up. Now, there is a discussion that's ongoing. Let me just put it. There's a discussion ongoing with the Department of Rural Housing, which is now Department of Housing because the law changed it from Rural Housing to Department of Housing. And something is going to come up, which is even going to make it more interesting or more flexible for government workers to access.
Okay, so very quickly, before you go on, who is a government worker? I'm sure some people are sitting down asking themselves, do I qualify? The teacher out there, the security person at the ministries, break it down.
So you have teachers, you have nurses, health workers, security workers, civil servants, public servants. If you are in any typical government employment, yes, irrespective of your income level, you have this facility.
Okay.
And you see, once the payment is so flexible and it's so attractive, you need to be a member of the housing cooperative that is associated with the corporate with the project. That is key, because we have modeled the project. It's undergirded, with a certain cooperative, ingredients. You understand how? That is why, and that is how we are able to make it work the way it's doing now.
Okay, but that is interesting. We have someone posing a question that segues neatly into this. Assuming someone is a public sector worker, earning about 1,000 cedis, and that is what Teresa Lawes shares with us. Some of us who are government workers cannot afford the so-called affordable housing. I am a nurse looking for affordable house to buy, but I can't because my net income is 1,000 cedis. I've been to over 4 properties owners, even government sector, but no avail. Can something be done to some of us who are government workers and earn 1,000 cedis? Mr. Megaibo, you are shaking your head vigorously.
Yes. I was shaking my head because I think we have to understand something too. It is not all of us. No matter what we do, some of us cannot own properties. So we have to find a way to make...
Mr. Megaibo, some of us can't own properties?
No matter how. Unfortunately, that's the honest truth. Studies have shown that in the Ghana population, about 13% of us have the purchasing power to buy houses.
13%?
13. We have the purchasing power if the properties are available. Then about 60% of us have ability to rent, but we are not finding the ideal accommodation to rent. And then the other percentage are those who cannot neither rent nor buy. So these people will need some kind of social housing. Even in America, even in the UK, these advanced countries, they have social systems that support the vulnerable. And that is what we need. Unfortunately, we don't have. There has been only political promises of getting some of these things done, but we never saw any. So that is what he was referring to. We need social housing interventions that will take care of some of these issues. And so it is the truth. So if you cannot buy a house, it is not that you are not entitled to a decent living until at least you die. You are entitled to it. So something must be done. That is why I used to say that this political manifesto kind of housing arrangement that we have in this country will not help us. We need a national agenda that all the political manifestos will feed into.
And that in itself is another conversation. We'll be taking some more messages. I saw you wanted to chip in briefly because I was going to ask you whether you actually agreed with all of what Mr. Megaibo was saying briefly before, so we take.
Yeah, briefly. You see, I think that I do not support or I do not completely agree with him. It's true. The Bible says that the poor you will always have with you. But you see, if you don't plan for the poor, if you fail to plan for the poor, at the end of the day, the mess and the problem you would have to deal with the problems that the poor creates becomes even more expensive. So if the alternative is that the poor cannot have, or most people cannot afford houses, what about lands? You can have lands because it's not only about houses. You can have a land, someone can buy half a plot at an area that is properly planned and laid out. The person can put, one block after the other, one block after the other. Before you realize, he's done one single room and it's expanding. If you don't have money to buy a complete 2-bedroom house or a complete 3-bedroom house, you can do a 1-bedroom house or a plot and then start. In fact, that is what the Plant City Extension, it's one option or some of the options that the Plant City Extension project Rent to Own, brings, so that people are not left out. Because otherwise you're going to create problems like we have in some blighted areas like Ashaiman and Kaswa and so many of these places, and our new cities will become something else. We need to find a way. I mean, however it is, some way, somehow, we have to plan for the poor. So if you don't have, or most people don't, you cannot afford for a full 2-3 bedroom house, start from somewhere. It's possible.
Start from somewhere. It is possible. So let's talk about the possibility, practical. Madam Lawe, who just sent in the comment, she's a nurse.
Yeah.
We know the wahala they all go through. Long hours, but the local fuel is very,
Very small.
very few. 1,000 CDs. Renting to own. How practical is that? Break it down for us.
Right. So
And I want you to break it down in terms of cost, in terms of how many years we're looking at, in terms of all of these, so that she can actually look at the permutations and say, okay, I want to go along with this.
okay. For instance, you are earning 1,000 Ghana cedis. Say that you're going to set aside 500 Ghana cedis, if it's possible.
That's half of it.
Half of it. If you are doing mortgage, most of the finance houses will tell you that you shouldn't do more than 40 to 50%
Right.
of your take-home income. So assume and plan it that way, that you're going to set aside between 40 to 50%. You say 50% of that. These days we hear of government wanting to do some rent assistance scheme and all of that. That can go, some way too. But if you are doing under our project or under our system, the rent to own, if you are doing even 500, because I said there is a certain cooperative model, it's undergirded with a cooperative model. If you are doing 500, and that is why a lot of people, don't get it, but we are so far advanced. As I speak with you, if there are 1,000 applicants, we have funding to provide for them the 1,000 homes.
Right.
If you are doing 500, coming back to there, if you are doing 500, within 7 years, you should have yourself a 1 to 2 bedroom house. You can expand.
Within 7 years.
7 years.
So let's do the quick math, right? 500 CDs
Yes.
by 12 would be a year.
Yes.
You multiply this by 7,
Yes.
which would give you 42,000 CDs.
That's right. Yes. And notice that you are not there alone. There are others with you because it's cooperative.
So let's get the cooperative angle. Mr. Megaibo is contributing, let's say, 5,000 monthly because he can afford it.
Yeah.
This lady is contributing 500. So Mr. Megaibo's contribution will serve as a shock absorber for her. What is the cooperative angle?
He is in a different category altogether. Maybe he is doing 4-bedroom villa or 4-bedroom normal bungalow type of houses.
So very quickly, explain the cooperative angle, how it helps.
Right. So the cooperative, this is also how the cooperative work. The cooperative gives, first of all, there are 2 angles. One, giving you a cover whilst you are already on board the city extension project. I mean, as you are paying for your house, there are 3 things that could occur. There could be temporary loss of income. There could be, invalidity. Maybe you had accident, so you're unable to work the way you should.
Right.
Even death, God forbid. In any of these instances, the cooperative, if you are a member in good standing, and
good standing means you've been making your payments, you've not defaulted.
You have not defaulted. You are doing your annual membership subscription fees. If you have done, say, up to 40%, you're a member in good standing, the cooperative will give you up to 12 months respite, whilst you take time to sort yourself out.
Where this respite means you're not making payments.
You're not making rental payments. The cooperative will be doing that on your behalf.
Wow. Okay.
If you have done up to, say, 70%, and any of these events occur, the cooperative can give you up to 36 months respite. I mean, for that period,
3 years.
3 years. Whilst you take time to sort yourself, get yourself together, because you see, we do not want a situation where you have defaulted 3 months, 6 months. It affects the project. It affects you when the project, your house, has to be taken away from you. I mean, you would have spent a lot of time and energy and investment into, these projects. So the cooperative system really comes as a cover. That's one. Number two is where you actually you are contributing towards your home itself. And that's why I say that if you become a member or if you join this cooperative, that's where maybe I'm earning 1,500 Ghana cedis. I want a house. That is why I have joined the cooperative. Or I'm buying my house already with the city extension project, but I want these arrangements as a backup. So I joined the cooperative. You get the difference. Yeah, so that is how it works.
We'll be taking some more questions. I just need to get this clearly. For the mortgage, if you default, you know this is what is going to follow. If you default in your system, renting to own, and you've made mention of some mitigating factors, let's say the person has suffered an accident and all of that, you have to deal with those. But the person has not suffered an accident, maybe things are just not financially working out for the person. The person is defaulting. I'm sure people out there would want to know what happens to them, very briefly.
For those who have defaulted.
Right.
For those who have defaulted. Yes, if you have defaulted, they are very strict. We are explaining it this way, but they are very strict terms and conditions, because for systems that are flexible like this, Ghanaians, we would want to take some advantage and sometimes undue advantage. So they are very strict. There are penalties that, So on a case-by-case basis, it would be investigated. Just like any other mortgage or system, it would be investigated on a case-by-case basis. Is it really true? Is this guy or this person able to do it, or is trying to
pull a fast one on
you?
So just like the mortgage, you can lose the property.
You can lose the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take some more of what you've been sharing with us via social media by way of your messages. Sedinam says, because there are no rules and regulations that govern house owners in this country, and secondly, the cost of building materials is really expensive. So Sedinam is focusing on the fact that the rules and regulations don't apply, and materials are also very expensive. These landlords, every day cement price has increased, and another day transport fares have gone up. Government has no price regulatory system. Rent agents like the high cost of rent for bigger commission. Walanyo sends in that one. Robert Afari says, young Ghanaians are forced to buy land, start constructing, while their income cannot even allow them to drink a glass of wine or a bottle of beer on weekends. And that is a very serious point being made. Isaac Opon says, nobody is regulating the price of commodities. The price of building materials are also going high. Let's take this one from Kaka, who says, taxes on building materials are too high. A lot of people are talking about the prices and taxes. Government is reluctant in regulating the laws and also not doing anything in housing for the poor, which will compel private house owners to reduce prices. That is prophecy seeker. Nana Jari says, what kills me is the children of the landlords who take over and behave like kings. In Dansuman now, you can't get a chamber and hall for even 400 cedis. Can you imagine? Wow. Divine Kojo says, the annoying one is even renting houses built in the 90s at exorbitant prices, and then they say, do you know the price of a bag of cement now? As if they are now going to build it. Okay. Stephen Asante says, because government is not producing its own building materials industry to support the citizens to build good houses. The element of government keeps coming back. Atarege Bernard says, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah is weeping every day in his grave. We now have looters claiming to be leaders, living like kings while their followers suffer under the scorching sun. Let's take this one from Nee, who says, now that rent tax has been introduced, it's going to be more expensive, right? That's a question in there. Prosper Bonnie says, with cost of land, building materials and labor, cement is now selling for 51 Ghana cedis. The price of land outside Accra is about 40,000. How many of us have that? Pakwesi Mike says, past and present governments have failed to address this issue, but will get money to give to foot soldiers to buy data. That's an interesting one. The last one for now, Kofi Gazy says, 1, the advent of unregulated agents and their I-read money-grabbing instinct. 2, the advent of e-commerce platforms. People go there to increasingly adjust their rent fees without taking into consideration location, the age of the building, etc. Mr. Megaibo.
Yeah.
Real facts. People are out there venting. And so there are accusations that government is not doing enough to aid the poor. Young people are saying that you are not even earning enough to give yourself a glass of wine or beer at the end of the week, yet you must start thinking about getting a property, a parcel of land. Very unrealistic. But it brought my mind back to, those days of control price. Let's start from there. No regulation. That in itself is a major, major, major problem, because there are those who will tell you all those factors you said, from the consultancy 10 to 16%, to your overhead costs 25 to 35% of the overall cost, and all of the other matters. But who is regulating? Who is watching to say that, no, Mr. Megaibo, this one, you are going over the top?
Unfortunately, we are being governed by pieces and bits of laws scattered around. But we don't have an industry regulator. So industry has called for it, that we are asking for CIDA. CIDA is Construction Industry Development Authority. We have asked for that, and there's somewhere going on. And then beside that, people are complaining about rent and landlord issue. Now we have a Real Estate Agency Act, which is in place. What is left is to establish the governing council, so that the act will start biting. So all those who are complaining about unregulated activities of the agents, I think it will be nipped in the bud very soon.
And not just agents, landlords and landladies. I mean, we're all going through it.
As for the landlords,
sometimes you are renting at this price. Next year, all of a sudden, it's shut up, and they will tell you if you don't take it, someone else will take it.
You see, we already have a beautiful law for that. No landlord has the right to increase rent. Are you aware? You cannot on your own increase rent. Unfortunately, that is not the subject for today. Landlords don't have any right to increase their own
Mr.
rent.
Megaibo,
They need to go
I
and
know
apply.
what is in the papers, but what is in the law is not what applies in people's houses.
I know, because it's a demand and supply issue. But there's a beautiful law for that already. So if we have a regulator, it will sanitize the system, call who must be called to order. When there's regulation, there's a guideline. If you flout it, you are whipped by whoever is in charge. So we've called for this industry regulator. And the current Minister for Works and Housing has also come to talk about something we have been talking about, the establishment of a housing authority. We think the politicians are playing too much on this housing issue. If he is able to establish a housing authority and allow technocrats to run that authority, we'll be able to bring all those difficulties and all the issues that we are talking about here will be dealt with, and government will just have to enact policies to push the agenda, and we'll be able to solve the housing situation. I really believe it.
A housing authority, do you think it's one of those crucial bits we need in there?
Yeah, it would go a long way to help. But you see, the bottom line is people need the houses. We will still go. Look, we had this rental issue. We made a law that wasn't even able to be. It was just hanging in there. It was never been able to be implemented. Do not charge rent for more than 6 months. It was just there. Now we even want to face reality. We say, look, it's not possible, so let's make it
1 year.
1 year. I'm very sure, and I know that people are still going to play around it. They'll find a way about it, by all means. The bottom line is that how do we make homes accessible, or how do we make the system create the enabling environments such that people can own homes, or at least buy some land and start. I agree with my former professor, Keke Adakwa, and the former vice chancellor for KNUST, who said that government has no business
doing business.
No, he says government has no business doing direct housing. I mean, like going into housing, create the enabling environment. Check the taxes, other policies, make the environment conducive for, provision from the private sector and other entities to be able to do. Because the government already has so much. How many houses? 2 million homes. Can government put in money for 2 million homes across? And it won't be just for the cities. If government is doing housing, then it has to think of the rural housing for those who are in there, for the one who is producing cocoa, for, the one who is, because there are other very critical areas. As we speak, I'm just giving you some of these insights. There is so much pressure on the city extension project, positive pressure. Calls to why are we biased? Why is it that everything is in Accra and around?
So other
regions. So maybe by the end of the year, we might announce Ifiakwesimintim area.
Right.
The northern areas, everyone is calling. So the government must take a certain critical look at. The authority will be there, but the real the footworks, the steps that would ensure that housing becomes accessible. It becomes possible for people to live in their own homes, peacefully.
So the housing authority is not necessarily the solution.
It's not necessarily.
We can even solve the problem without a housing authority.
Well, but it has to, at least we need that, because human beings are human beings.
Okay. Mr. Aidoo, I'll come to you, Mr. Amegaibo, but before I do so, very quickly, so back to the scenario of the person, the nurse who earns 1,000 cedis, and it's still a bit steep, calling for 500 cedis, which is half of what she earns. But these 500 cedis, will they remain 7 years down the line? Will she still be paying 500 cedis? Looking at the fact that there'll be, currency fluctuations, CD to dollar, CD to pound, look at it, 6 CDs, 9 CDs, and all of that. With all of that in there, is she still going to be paying 500 CDs moving on for about 7 years?
You see, it's flat. And the 7 years is when she will move in. She's still going to continue to make payment until she has finished paying for the cost of the house.
So there could be price fluctuations in terms of the house she's getting, but she's still going to maintain the 500 CD payment till she meets the requirement.
The requirement, yes.
Okay.
You understand?
So it means that in essence, though she's still paying 500 every month, she could, if initially she felt that I was going to pay 20,000 before I move in, it could get to the point where she's actually paying 25,000 before she moves in, though she's still paying 500.
No. For instance, if the cost of the property is 50,000 or 70,000, the 7 years would let you reach, say, about the 20% or 30% that you require before you move into the house. Then you know that at least you have a home. You'll still have to finish paying for the rest or the remaining 70%. But the interesting thing is that you are paying the 500 that you're paying is flat. You see, there's so many things.
Flat for the 7 years.
Flat for the rest of the
entire period.
The entire tenor. You understand? There are so many things that goes on into even your construction methodology can increase cost.
Okay.
The procurement approach you use can increase cost. If you go for bank loan, it can also increase cost. You pass it on to the consumer. So there are certain safeguards. There are certain cost-saving mechanisms or cost aspects that we have dealt with.
Okay, so those have been dealt with. We have to go a bit quickly on this one. My final bit to you is, so let's say I'm paying 500 cedis, and all of a sudden I get some kind of boon, or maybe my new job is now paying me, let's say, 2,000 cedis.
You can pay up front.
So you can pay more.
You can just pay more.
Can I change my monthly?
Why you can do that?
All right, Mr. Amegaibo.
And even in that case, you get your home earlier. You get to move in earlier.
Okay. There were some areas of concern for you.
Yeah, it's the same issue, but I think we'll interrogate it later. The cost that she's asking somebody should pay 500 over a period, and I don't know whether he doesn't have other obligations, utilities and other things. So can he survive under the 1,000? But you see, I agree. We need some schemes, and I really feel that what he's doing is worth encouraging others to join to do similar schemes or even other schemes. So we need that. And then the issue of the regulation. You see, the reason why we need a regulator is that the politician doesn't understand housing. Unfortunately, they are leading it now. So if we get a regulator and we beef the regulation, the authority with technocrats, I'm sure we'll solve the problem.
It's interesting that point you make. Yes. The politician doesn't understand
he doesn't understand.
housing.
He doesn't.
Yet he is at the helm of affairs, pulling the strings.
Yes. They don't understand it. So I believe that is why the authority is important. And the minister has embraced it. So I think that should come on and we'll work with it. And then you see, unfortunately, time is not on our side. But there are certain things that we need to do. It's a long-term thing for us to begin to feel and find a solution. Housing, the funding issue, we need a housing fund. We have not established any housing fund. That's why all of us are going onto the ordinary market to borrow like everybody else. We need to establish a housing fund. And then local
to be spearheaded by government.
Yes.
Okay.
Not necessarily. Like you said, enabling environment for things to happen with or without government, but to facilitate us for us to do. And then we are over-relying on importation. Can we do something to increase our local production for the input for building? I mean, we averagely one house will need about 6 to 7 WCs, a typical 3-bedroom or so. You need about 5 WCs in a typical. How many industries do we have in this country that produces WC? We don't have. So everything is what? Importation, importation, importation. So we need to help our local industries to grow, to produce what we need so that we can cut down on the over-importation. That will help us because the dollar volatility issue. Today, iron rods are being increased anyhow. As of December, it went about 40%. Can you imagine? January, it went up again. After the 40%, it went up about 5 to 6%. And it kept, going up. It is recently that I've heard that some iron rod houses have started, going down. I don't know whether the trend is going to go all the way. Right. But cement is not going down. Cement is going up all the time. So we have to do something locally to make sure that the over-reliance on importation also comes down. Job for the boys as well.
Jobs for the boys as well. My final bit to you, from the standpoint of Grader, what are you doing to beat down the cost of some of your facilities?
It's all about the arrangement. There are so many, factors that make this price hikes. So if we work on it, like you're saying, because of time, if we work on them, we'll be able to bring that. If we have government intervening on land issues, why the 10-year system is terrible, registration goes bad. If we tidy that part, it means that when you have a cost price for your land at 2,000, it stays as 2,000. If we have funding scheme, housing scheme, that we can go and borrow, then we don't all have to go into the open market and borrow at 24, but we can go to the scheme and borrow at 10%. These are some of the key issues that we need to do to bring the house on. If we don't do them, the private sector must thrive on profit.
In 30 seconds, your concluding remarks.
Yeah, I think government must take a very long-term view of housing. Specifically, and I would want to talk for the Plant City Extension project. I would say it again, that a government department in a foreign country, I mean one of our neighboring countries, called to inquire, so that even if foreigners are coming, then what about what our local government is doing? They have to take keen interest in the city extension project.
Well, this is where we're going to have to wrap up. Why is housing so expensive in Ghana? Now you know, and we have the solutions. A housing authority, a housing fund. We can discuss all of these. But those who joined the conversation tonight, Samuel Amegaibo, Executive Director with Grader, and of course, Mr. Aidoo, who is with the Planned City Extension Project. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the conversation. And for all of you who did the watching, thank you. My name is Benjamin Akakwo. This has been another installment of The Probe. Coming up on Joy 99.7 FM is A Walk with Jesus. Do have a good night.